Thank you very much for this kind of introduction, which is very flattering, and I hope you will allow me to speak Russian. My ancestors are coming from Russia. It's very nice that you have invited to this conference defense ministers, and in my opinion, for the last 40 minutes, they've made very important statements, and I never heard the statements of that kind of representatives of NATO, how to restructure the system of security in Europe, which is very unstable, which was demonstrated by the Ukrainian crisis. And Russia, if we start with Russia, will not accept the fact that the European system of security rests on two pillars, NATO and European Union. Actually, Russia accepted the expansion of NATO to the countries of Baltic republics and former Warsaw countries, but the relying on these two pillars, Russia rejects, but also responds to that, and the West perceives that as the Russian imperialism. And now Europe is facing a very serious dilemma. The West, and you have to explain that, wouldn't like to refuse any country in its sovereign desire to be part of the alliance. But in case of Ukraine, the West takes the risks of very serious confrontation through the whole of continent. And naturally, the European security system infrastructure, which was formed 25 years ago, needs to be overhauled. And let's think how it should be done. Unfortunately, the necessity to create a new home with the name Europe was not identified 25 years ago, neither in Russia nor in the West. And the conflict in Ukraine never led to specific ideas to considerably improve the situation in the sphere of security in Europe. And everyone remains at its own positions, and the West hopes that Russia will sooner or later accept the existing order, but Russia is not making any proposals in respect of what kind of role it's going to play in the Europe of future, or whether it is interested in Europe at all, or Russia decided to take a strategic turn over to Asia, to Asian country, to work in the framework of the Shanghai Organization on Cooperation. And maybe proceeding from that, European Union will make other steps to fortify transatlantic union. Well, I'm sure that we need to generate some kind of reliable concept, and I'd like to make 5 brief proposals for the future European home. First is to improve the role of OSCE, and we need to improve the process of Helsinki II, and the new OSCE should be projected as a tool of joint mild force for Europe and for the whole of Europe to confront future challenges in the sphere of migration, energy security, cyber threat, terrorism, international crime, and climate protection, the situation which might become very threatening. There might be a creation of the Security Council of Europe, on a rotating basis, which was exposed as an idea by Madam Merkel and former President of Russia, Mr. Medvedev. Creation of general space from Lisbon to Vladivostok, and under this umbrella, we could develop different operational agreements between Russia and European Union, between NATO and CSTE and European Union could get the status of observer at the Shanghai Organization of Cooperation. And speaking about the common neighbors like Ukraine or the Eastern Partnership of European Union, we might have a constructive partnership with these countries. And I would say that the idea of this general space from Vladivostok to Lisbon in the German establishment is very popular, although nobody, or perhaps some, are not sharing these viewpoints in the Minsk Accord. It is clearly said there, and Germany was mentioning the idea of creation this common space from Lisbon and Vladivostok. One more problem is the problems of making peace between Poland and Russia and the Baltic states. Germany and Russia made peace after the last war, and once NATO expanded, and those countries which became members of NATO, the former Warsaw Pact treaties, and they have their own problems, and it is understandable. However, these former countries of the War Pact, they joined old NATO and old European Union, and before 2002, the process of NATO and European Union was more successful than it is today. So making peace with such countries like Poland and others after that Smolensk disaster of 2010, when the Polish president perished in this crash, and the fourth point is institutional broad dialogue in the format European Unions concerning the values. We're not living in a very just European conflict, but this is the conflict which is based on the values of Europe, and this foreign policy is resting on these values, but Russia considers this a missionary approach, and Russia tries to cooperate with the West, not being subjugated by liberal values, but basing on pragmatic economic interests, and perhaps during Helsinki II process, maybe new Paris Charter might be signed and adopted in order to prevent this conflict of values. And there should be some new approach to Islamic values, and Russia should be part of that dialogue to understand what kind of civilization we will be living in the future. And the last one is the European policy of disarmament. Once Iran refused or discontinued its nuclear program, so there's no sense in creation of anti-missile defense in Europe. And that was the basic contradictions. And remember the speech of the president in Munich on Conference of Security. And once the peaceful process in Ukraine is accomplished, we could speak about further de-escalations and also to withdraw tactical nuclear weapons from the territory of Germany. Even at the peak of the Ukrainian conflict in the intellectual circles of Germany and France, there was a conversation about resurrection of traditional Western policy to avoid those worsening of relationship with Russia. However, the Western politicians like Brandt or Genscher, who passed away, our wish is the enhancement of pro-European lobby in Russia. How could we structure new Europe? And with this, I'm finishing off. Of course, we cannot keep silent on these problems, and there are forces both in Europe and the United States who would like to structure a general economic zone which will make the relations between Europe and Russia more complicated. There are also certain discipline of NATO bloc, and everybody has to comply with the standards, and Russia is finding it difficult to lead this dialogue. And if the continental Europe, which is perceived as the foundation for the general European home from Vladivostok to Lisbon, but still there is no alternative to this process. Yes, we have certain challenges from the south. The conflict east and west is behind, but we are still passing through it, and we have to concentrate, and that's why we discussed that in great details. And however, this big conflict, east, north, and south conflict will continue to live. Thank you for your attention.